What is up, everybody? I am finally back from all of the vacations and all of the traveling. It's time to get back into our regularly scheduled What Sold from last week. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my sales from last week on eBay and Poshmark. I do sell on other platforms, but for just this video, I want to focus on those two because those are where I make the bulk of my income. I have so much to share with you guys from PoshFest, but for now, I'm going to stick to just the sales. So let's dive right in. All right, so we are going over last week, September 7th through the 13th. I cannot believe we're almost to October already, but here we are. And sales for me have continued to gradually go up and then remain pretty steady, which I am very hopeful for. Typically every year, my biggest sales month is October, and so I'm expecting a big spike here next month. And right now I'm just preparing for that, trying to get as many things listed as possible, get all of my ducks in a row to prepare for the busy season. Last week, I sold 123 items between those two platforms. 87 were on eBay and 36 items were on Poshmark. My average sale price in total was much lower than I would like it to be, but again, I'm fleshing out older items. I'll actually have a video coming up very soon talking about that. And so my average sale price was just under $31, and my gross item sales were a little over $3,700. On eBay, my average item sale price was around $35, much closer to where I want it to be. And on Poshmark, and this is kind of where everything got dragged down, was around $21. Still had great sales on both, still liquidating a lot of older items on both platforms. Let's dive into those sales now. All right, so the first one, this is a brand you definitely want to know if you haven't already. And even if you do know it, just take a look at how plain some of these items can be. You really need to know what it is that you are looking for so you don't pass on it. I have passed on Arc'teryx a couple of times because I didn't realize that's what it was. And so I'm usually looking for this logo right here. It's kind of like a fossil logo. And so Arc'teryx, men's or women's, is an excellent brand to get. Still a great sell-through rate, and if you can find outerwear, it is going to be a big ASP. This one was an item that we found at the bins. It was also Gore-Tex, and it was a jacket. We listed this one several months back. It actually took a little bit longer to sell than I would have liked, and so we dropped the price. Whenever something becomes 90 days or older, with my current process, we are dropping prices at 90 days, and then again after that and possibly reworking it. And so you're going to see a theme in today's video where there are items that were listed outside of their season. For instance, this one was listed in May, moving right into spring. A jacket like this, not really typically something people are looking for during that time. And so it took coming back into colder weather season for this to become popular again. And so if I would have initially priced that lower, which we should have, I think that we would have sold it back in May, but you live and you learn. And again, you'll see a theme of some mistakes that myself or my team made when pricing items. We priced slightly too high. And that's why we have the process of every 90 days dropping prices, because usually we've got everything set. You know, it's an item with a demand. The pictures look good. The title looks good. It's just simply we priced slightly too high. And so we can correct that and get it to move with a price drop, which is what we did for a lot of these items. So this one took couple months longer than I would have liked to have sell. Listed this back in May. Got this from the bins, so very low cost of goods. Originally listed for closer to $200 or best offer, and it ended up selling on an offer we received for $150. So about $2 to $3 into $150. And like I said, it did not take that long to sell, but longer than I would have liked. Next up, this one was actually a super quick flip at the bins because we did the right thing. So when we priced this item, we heavily accounted for the super low sell-through rate on this, but it was coming into the right season. And so I kind of play a tug of war in my mind on pricing. Are we going in this direction or should we be going in this direction? And so you kind of find yourself in the middle and place yourself where you think pricing is most effective according to your business model. For us, we're trying to sell items within 90 days. So we listed this on August 27th. It sold on September 10th, so just a few weeks. Listed this for $120 or best offer. This is a Max Mara coat. Max Mara is very high retail, very luxurious, high quality made pieces. However, the sell-through rate and saturation on a resale market like eBay is pretty high, meaning the sell-through rate is pretty low. And so even though it's a great item, a substantial piece, it's on trend with what people are looking for, we have to really keep that in mind if there's not a huge demand for it because there's too many on the market. And so with that in mind, myself and the person who sourced this had a discussion about pricing, and we priced much, much lower to account for all of those details. Again, kind of playing that tug of war with pricing. So got this from the bins, probably paid about $3 because it was a little bit heavier. It listed for 120 or best offer, and we accepted an offer within just a few weeks for $94, which of course I accepted. The alternative is pricing it what everybody else is pricing it at, close to like 150 and up. Some are listed for like $400. And unfortunately, those things are probably just never going to sell because you have too much competition of exact or very, very similar items at much lower prices. So that's how you can turn a lower sell-through rate item, if there's enough stuff tugging it in the other direction, into a quick sale using pricing. Next up, this one was a super quick sale. I was so happy with this. Joe and I just went on a vacation to somewhere in Florida, and we did a tiny bit of sourcing, did not do a whole lot, but one of the places we stopped at, I did find this Hollister top. Now, Y2K tops in general with specific styles, sizes, colors, brands, all of that stuff, can sell for quite a bit of money, but the one that sells the most is Abercrombie and Fitch, which this one was not. However, recently Hollister has become a lot more popular than it was a couple of months ago. And so with this in mind, I recomped everything for the exact style I had with all the factors and everything going for it, play that tug of war in my mind on which direction to go with pricing. And I decided to price higher because mine was more rare. Picked this up for $5.97, and I listed this for $75. Listed this on September 12th, and this sold the exact same day that we listed it for our full asking price. I'm telling you guys, there is so much money to be made on what people consider bad brands. And even if you don't consider it a bad brand, it's definitely not a brand that you can just pick up anything in. The brand as a whole does not have a great sell-through rate. And so that's what I consider a known to be bad brand. I personally don't believe that there are bad brands in anything. It is all about style, and that's why an item like this can sell the exact same day for full asking price of $75. If you want to know more about Y2K tops, I share them a lot in my what sold videos. I try to give you guys as much detail as possible, but if you want some more hands-on guidance, we do have tons of videos in Reseller's Edge, which is the mentorship group that myself and Trash Pandas created. And we can walk you through that process, answer your questions, give you examples, take a look at the items that you're actually thinking about getting, and just work more hands-on with you. Link is always down below for that mentorship group if you are interested. Next up, another style-based piece. I have mentioned this before. I mentioned it last year, and I just mentioned it recently, where these sold really well for me last year, regardless of brand, and I expect they were going to do well this year, and here they are. You're going to see a couple of them in today's What Sold video, and they are longer length vintage velvet dresses, but they have to look younger. They have to look like they could fit on a younger person because that's who's buying this up. So this is not a brand I would memorize, but it is a vintage dress. It was a gorgeous younger silhouette. It was like a purple burgundy red color with an interesting back and a back slit. So all of those details playing tug of war again in my head, moving it to adding value. And then there were some factors that were decreasing value for me. So with all of that in mind, I decided to price this at $60, and it sold for my full asking price of $60. This one only took a couple of weeks of being listed. I originally paid $8.99 for this, and I used a bunch of keywords like fairy grunge, velvet, maxi, whimsy goth, and vamp. Next up, this is definitely a bolo to look out for, vintage Carhartt jackets, the canvas ones, and just about anything. And depending on the model you have, age, color, condition, all that stuff, size, can play a big role in price and sell-through rate. So this was not one that sold for a ton, but it is a Carhartt canvas jacket nonetheless. And so for that reason, we just priced accordingly. We paid $10 for this, listed it for $50, and this actually sold within just 2 days of being listed for our full asking price. Next up, this would be an example of one where we priced it up way too high and we did not consider that there were a lot of lacking factors in this. We didn't really consider our customer and we should have priced much, much lower, which is why it took a couple months longer to sell than we would have liked. This is by the brand Jody Christopher. I have had some pretty good luck with this brand only because a lot of their stuff it has good style-based pieces, but not necessarily a brand I would look for. This is a vintage Y2K top. Very good factors on this, although the factors, again, were lacking on some things and it just really wasn't being directed to the right customer. It was kind of ambiguous, if that makes sense, but we added a bunch of keywords like fairy to this and we ended up dropping the price because it was past 90 days and it ended up selling for a dropped price of around $52. I originally paid $6.69 and again, that did take a few months to sell. Next up, this is something that I look for quite a bit. It is vintage camo shirts, vintage camo jackets, vintage hunting gear type stuff, and mossy oak can sometimes perform well if you have a very unique print. When I originally picked this up, I did think that I had a unique print and I paid up for this item and I should not have done that. I originally listed this for around $70 and there was quite a few flaws on this. I then dropped the price because we had been sitting on it and it ended up selling for an offer of $50. Had I priced it at that amount originally, it would have sold quicker. I know a lot of you guys are going to ask, well, why didn't you? Well, sometimes when you check comps, like the data looks different than it does a couple months from now. And so time had a lot to do with that. And also I do have employees who are helping me source and price and, we make mistakes and that's why we have the price drops in order. So I wanted to show you guys a few of these essentially mistakes, items that took longer to sell, but did sell because we have a structure in place for price drops. And this was definitely one of those. So this vintage mossy oak unique camo shirt sold for an offer of $50. I made my money back and then some, but I definitely would not make that mistake again. Next up, I have talked about the swimsuit brand a ton. I love picking it up. This is Miracle Suit. I try to stick to their larger sizes. In this case, it wasn't necessarily a super large size. It was only a size 12, but it had other factors, again, playing that tug of war in my head with pricing, not a higher size tag, but it was new at tags and it was the shaping material, the ruching detail that people are looking for. And so I priced accordingly, listed this one for $50. It did sell for our full asking price of $50 and it actually sold the next day after we got it listed. I actually got this in wholesale for $10. So 10 and $2.50 took just one day to sell. This is a brand I look for in lots of things, lots of factor stacking. It is LL Bean. I do live in kind of a mountainous, outdoorsy area, and so I come across brands like LL Bean pretty often, and so I'm capitalizing on that. I'm looking for what does sell in LL Bean, and men's pieces specifically sell really well, as well as outerwear, and so this was both men's and outerwear. This one was called the Thinsulate Light Loft Coat in a size large. I listed it for $45 or best offer. It sold for my full asking price of $45, so no offer, within about a week of being listed. So keep your eye out for LL Bean. Again, there is lots of factor stacking that has to take place, so make sure you do your comps. Factor stacking stuff can be comped. It's not like style-based stuff. And so if you have a brand like LL Bean, just add all of your factors in there, maybe possibly do what I did, look up the style name for it, and that's how you can start picking up brands that other people pass on. Next up, this is Abercrombie & Fitch. This is a men's, I didn't think it was true vintage. It's Y2K style, but I think this is a more modern tag. Slightly older, but more modern. But I got it anyways because it was a men's distressed military jacket, and the Abercrombie military looking stuff like this fatigue green tends to do pretty well. So just lots of factor stacking in this. Substantial piece, men's, larger size, great brand for Y2K stuff. I listed this one for $50. I paid $7.99 for it, and it sold within just a little over a month for an offer to watcher of $42. Next up, this is another example of something that took a month or two longer to sell than I would have liked, and it was because of the price, but sold with a dropped price. This is a pair of Uggs Y2K style leather Sherpa lined boots. I think another reason these took so long to sell is because they were a size 5, so they're a lot smaller of a size, but UGG stuff, especially the Y2K stuff, is starting to have a resurgence. So, and then moving into colder weather, UGG tends to spike as well. I actually just saw, I heavily study Google Trends, I get the newsletters, all that stuff, and I factor that into all of my research for the mentorship group. And recently, it was like a couple days ago, I saw the UGG ballet flats were at the highest search that they have been in a long time on Google Shopping. And so I can see UGG taking a little bit of a spike here soon. So no surprise that these sold. Like I said, took a little bit longer to sell than I would have liked. I think I originally listed them for around $50, dropped the price, and sold on an offer to watcher for $38. These ones did take several months to sell. Next up, this was a quicker flip. I showed this in a haul video. This is Free People. I don't pick up a ton of Free People anymore. It's got to be a substantial piece usually, a better size, a good style, you know, factor stacking involved. But the one thing I do look for pretty often is the longer length dresses or skirts. This one was a midi dress and very specific style. It was called the Agatha midi dress. So I looked all of that up and priced accordingly. Actually priced lower because sell-through rate was not at 100%. Paid $8.99, listed for $40, and it sold for full asking price of $40. This one took 2 months to sell. This is another example of one that took longer to sell and sold on a drop price. This is a St. John's Bay kind of like chore barn coat. I just combined those, chore barn coat. This is a very trendy style, specifically in fall and winter. However, I listed this in May. Price too high originally, and I paid the price for that. So eBay has held my money since then, and it ended up selling on an offer for $37. So I'm still making a great amount of money. I just wish it would have sold quicker, and so we're working on fine-tuning some of those things in our business. But definitely keep your eye out for barn coats, chore coats. I think they're going to be pretty popular this year. Just be smart about your pricing. St. John's Bay is definitely not a brand I normally look for, but in this style can do well. This is another one that had to wait for a drop price. This is Vuori. Very great sell-through rate still on Vuori. We picked these joggers up from the bins. These actually ended up having a small hole on them, and so we did not drop the price when we realized that. We kept it at what it would have been. And that's why they did not sell super quickly. They took several months to sell, not too long. And we listed these originally for around $50 to $60, and they sold on an offer for $40. So Ben's price into $40, but did take several months to sell, longer than I would have liked. All right, another one that took a while to sell and waited for a dropped price to come into season. All of these were listed in May too. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. So all of these were listed like when the cold weather was ending and turning into warmer weather, and now they're selling as it's turning back into colder weather. So just something to be thinking about as you guys are picking up items. This is Vintage OP, Ocean Pacific. Some of their vintage stuff can perform well. This was a really cool on-trend men's Y2K style-based pickup. A lot of you guys have asked about men's style-based pickups. One of my favorite things to pick up are the Y2K men's hoodies. This would be an example of one of them. And I listed this probably close to $40 originally, and it ended up selling on our dropped price for around $33. Again, didn't take like crazy long to sell, but took about 6 months. All right, next up, a quick flip in one of my favorite brands, which is the Old Navy. This is a great brand to look for style-based pieces in. I paid $6.09 for this. It is a maxi dress. It has a great silhouette. I used keyword milkmaid, peasant, and boho. It was also a larger size, which is going to aid in both sell-through rate and ASP in Old Navy dresses. I listed this one for $35. It sold for full asking price of $35, and it only took about 3 weeks to sell, which is always amazing. I love selling Old Navy dresses. Similar to Free People, I look for Anthropologie pieces and longer length dresses as well. This is a Maeve by Anthropologie midi length dress. Picked this up. I think I actually tried to maybe run this on Whatnot and nobody wanted it. So I went ahead and listed it myself for $40. It sold on an offer to Watcher for $34, and this sold within, let's see here, it looks like a month and a half. All right, this is a Bolo brand high sell-through rate doer men's pants and jeans. This one, although it had a great sell-through rate, this unfortunately did have multiple problems with it. So we went ahead and listed it anyways because of the high sell-through rate and just dropped the price. They were called the T2X straight leg pants. Got these from the bins, listed them for $35. Again, dropped price because of the flaws, and they sold for full asking price of $35. And these ones took about a month and a half to sell. So this is an example of where we priced correctly. We played tug of war correctly on pricing. All right, here's another example of one of those velvet dresses. This is just by the brand Ronnie Nicole. Again, not a brand I would memorize, definitely on style. This one is more of a plain one. It didn't have details in the back, the slit, and it was just plain black. So I priced accordingly because of that. Listed this one for $30, and it did sell for our full asking price of $30. This one took a few months to sell. Use some keywords like vintage, witchy, 90s, and whimsy goth. All right, this one might surprise you, love it or hate it. I do flip Shein if it is a good style-based piece. I do not seek out Shein. I think that they not the best company and contribute to a lot of landfills, but that's why I still flip them if I can, because I'd rather save it from the landfill, and hey, I get to make a lot of money as I go on. So this is a Shein piece. We picked this up from the bins, super lightweight because it's a super cheap material, but this was very on trend style. The silhouette, the smocking detail, the ruffle, the color, the link, all of it. And we even included Shein in our title. By the way, we didn't have to do that. That's just a title structure that my listers follow. We could have definitely have dropped that, but it didn't matter because people are still buying it based off of style alone. Picked this up from the bins, listed this for $40, which might sound outrageous to you, but all of the factors were there. Brand did not matter. Listed for $40, sold on an offer to Watcher for $34, and this one took about a month to sell. Another style-based piece, this is also a bins pickup. This is Japna, an older label by Japna. Again, just great factor stacking style-based piece, satin, baby doll style, tons of keywords that could go with this. Listed this for $30. It did sell for our full asking price of $30, and this one actually only took 10 days to sell. Next up, here's Hollister again. This one's more of a plain piece. This is a Y2K t-shirt. This one actually was lacking a lot of factors in my opinion, so I priced lower because of that. I listed this for $30, which is still great for a Hollister t-shirt. It did sell for my full asking price of $30. This one actually sold the next day after being listed. Please, please, please start looking into style-based stuff. I promise not only will it help you with finding style-based pieces, but understanding styles and what buyers are looking for will also help you to identify bolos that you didn't know about. And by the way, all of these sales are plus buyer paid shipping, and we make a little bit of money off of shipping because we charge our buyer the retail rate and we get the commercial rate. All right, next up, this is a brand you definitely want to look for, especially right now. It is Smart Wool. They make a lot of merino wool base layers, and we come across them pretty often. Here is their logo. This one was a women's merino full zip hoodie. These have become, I guess the brand as a whole, a lot of people are finding more often. And so because of that, you got to price more competitively, but still great flips and good money for it. Pick this up for $6, I believe, from a wholesaler. It listed for $30. It sold on an offer to Watcher for $25, and this actually only took 2 days to sell. Next up, this was another example of one that took longer to sell than I would have liked. This is actually a Bolo brand, Holderness and Born. This one, I think the reason this took a little bit longer to sell is because it had a logo on it, which we were unsure about, and we should have maybe looked a little bit more into that. But regardless, Holderness and Born, excellent brand to look for, very high sell-through rate, especially in the golf polos as well as other things. And we listed accordingly and still it did not sell. So we followed our pricing drop and accepted an offer of $25 and again took about 6 months to sell for that price. So sometimes you can have an excellent brand, you can have an excellent sell-through rate, you can have an excellent size, be in excellent condition, and it still not work out. That happens to me too. I do think that the embroidery did not help in this case, but otherwise everything was in great shape, lots of factor stacking, and it just didn't sell. Wrong place, wrong time in the season. And I still follow that pricing structure to get those items to sell and to flush those out. So this ended up selling for $25. This is another, I guess, brand that I do keep my eye out for, specifically in the men's department, and specifically if there is a specific style name, it is Vineyard Vines. The men's stuff still does very well for me. And if I see any kind of a style name on it or a line, I'm usually looking it up. This is a men's Vineyard Vines on the go performance shirt in a larger size. I listed this for $25. It sold for full asking price of $25, and this only took about a week to sell. This is a factor stacking piece. This is modern Abercrombie and Fitch. I actually have been having some good luck with modern Abercrombie and Fitch, but again, I'm factor stacking all of those things. So this is a linen blend pair of wide leg pants, but it was a size extra small. The extra smalls tugging more to a cheaper price. So I kept all of that in mind and I listed at $25. We picked these up from the bins. They sold for my full asking price of $25 and it only took about a month and a half to sell. Here is a kids piece. I've actually been learning a little bit more about kids. I do not mind at all selling kids. I just typically don't come across a whole lot of kids in great brands. But recently, Bethany, one of our coaches in Resellers Edge, she does really well with kids. She actually sells to consignment stores, not consigns, but sells wholesale to consignment stores. And so she's been doing a couple of videos and things like that for our members. And I've rewatched them and learned some new kids brands. So I'm on the hunt now for some kids stuff. But this is one I came across while looking for some better kids stuff. And it's a brand I know, but I probably wouldn't have been looking in the kids had it not been for her. And this is a Lily Pulitzer little girl's dress. I picked this up for $2.99 and listed it for around $25. It sold on a dropped price of around $22. Great thing about kids is it's typically priced lower, especially if you get it at the bins. You're talking like cents. But to be able to flip for $25 is what I am aiming for. And this was a great flip. All right, this was a style-based piece. This is Vintage No Boundaries. This is what a lot of people are calling baby tees, and it is a newer term to me and one that I'm trying to use. It's essentially these like kind of croppy but boxy, but also vintage Y2K shirts. So this is an interesting baby tee, and I definitely think that that phrase is absolutely what sold it. So this sold within about 2 months of being listed for my full asking price of $23. So if you have something like this, again, you want to make sure it's actually like vintage Y2K. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to sell. But adding baby tee to your title can be helpful. Here is another completely style-based piece, not a brand I would memorize at all. This is just a really cool patchwork, fairy grunge type of top, factor stacked, keyworded up the title, listed this for $25. It sold for my full asking price of $25, and it only took a couple of weeks to sell. A lot of this patchwork stuff has been performing really well for me. Here is another style-based piece. You guys know I love the Y2K tank tops. This is not a brand I know anything about, but it is a Y2K tank top with a few good factors that help to aid in it. Pick this up from the bins, listed for $25. It sold for full asking price of $25, and this one only took a couple of weeks to sell. Here is another Y2K tank top. This one actually got price dropped and then sold. It is a Roxy true Y2K tank top. I originally listed for $30. Again, it did not sell, so I dropped the price and it sold for my drop price of around $24. This one did have quite a bit of a wear on it, is why it took so long to sell. And then last one on eBay before I dive into some of the better Poshmark sales. This is another Hollister item. Although this is a Y2K style, I did not believe it was actually vintage, so we omitted that from the title, but it did not matter because it was a great style. People are looking for Y2K style Henleys, and Hollister is a great brand right now to pair with that. And so again, tug of war in my mind, I listed accordingly given the fact that it wasn't vintage, and I priced this at $30. This ended up selling on an offer to Watcher for $25, and this one took about 2.5 months to sell. All right, moving on to the Poshmark sales. I had bolos, I had style base, I had factor stacking. So you can do it all on all platforms. You just have to understand how to really work the platform to get the most sales. And on eBay, there are tons of customers. So it's a lot easier to do all three of those things on eBay because there's just so many more customers to sell to. Whereas on Poshmark, you can see you can have the sales. It's just not going to happen as often as eBay due to the fact that there's less customers on the platform. At least that's how I see it. So this is a factor stacking piece. This is Cashmere by Charter Club, not a brand I would memorize, but it was a factor stacking piece. It was a cashmere sweater blazer. I listed this for around $30 and it sold on an offer for $25 on Poshmark. Here is another kind of factor stacking piece. I like picking up Duluth Trading Company in women's larger sizes. This is a 4X button-down shirt. Had this listed for around $30. I priced slightly higher on Poshmark to account for offers, and someone sent me an offer for $21, and I went ahead and accepted. Here is a bolo brand. This is called Angry Minnow, and they make flannels with these graphics on the back. They might make other things, but this is what they are well known for. And so I am constantly looking for brands like this. There's a couple other ones with a similar vibe. Picked this one up, a couple of months ago, and it's just now, moving into fall season. And so these are going to move very quickly now. So keep your eye out for them. I listed this for around, I think, $55 and received an offer for $46, which I went ahead and accepted. Here is a style-based piece. This is just a vintage men's sweater. I accepted an offer of $25. I wanted to show you this because men's cardigans are moving again for me. Every single year they move. They were really popular last year. They seem to be popular again this year. And so this is your heads up to start looking for men's cardigans. I probably could have held out for a larger price on this just because it had a lot of great details. It was true vintage. It had the shawl neckline, great print, but it was missing its like little tie thing, and I didn't want to sit on it. I had an offer for $25 and I accepted. Next up, a style-based piece, not a brand I know anything about, but it is a 100% silk vest. This was very fairy grunge goblin core, which you can see we included in our title, and we accepted an offer of $25 on this. Next up, I'm pretty sure I've showed this in every What Sold video for like the last 2 months. We have gotten some donations of clothing in, some of which were worth listing, some of which were not, but this one person donated a ton of vintage Wrangler men's jeans and the style cowboy cut, which has a high sell-through rate. So keep your eye out for the Wrangler cowboy cut jeans. And if you look at them, they really don't look like anything super special. A lot of them that I had like a lot of fading and stuff on them, but they've all flown off the shelf. Not for a ton, anywhere from like $25 to $35, but consistent sellers. And just when I think I don't have any more left, then one pops up in What Sold. So I don't think I have any more left, but maybe you'll see them pop up again. So this one sold for an offer of $26. All right, this is a great example of how there are no bad brands. Aerie is definitely not a brand with a high sell-through rate. Most of their stuff is oversaturated, and even if you factor stack, you're usually not going to get a high enough dollar amount that it's worth picking up to flip unless you're getting things from the bins. I personally love Aerie. It is one of my favorite brands to wear. And so because I come across it often and I just really like it, I think they have some great styles. I have done deep dives into Aerie to try and figure out what sells well in this brand. And every time I do that, I come across this style called Lumberjane. And so I come across this style pretty often. It's a waffle thermal type oversized shirt, very good sell-through rate, and it should start selling really well now that we're moving into fall. This was a larger size. I listed it for $35. It sold for my full asking price of $35, which you should not be able to do with pre-owned Aerie because it just doesn't sell well, but there are specific styles, and this is definitely one of them. So keep your eye out for these Aerie Lumberjane shirts. All right, I showed this in a thrift haul. This is just Steven, New York, which is like the designer version of Steve Madden. But I mentioned these in a few videos, which are the sandals that look like a dupe for the Hermes sandals, and they have significantly higher sell-through rates. So when I came across these, I was doing a shoe deep dive, and I think I came across some Sam Edelman ones, and I was like, okay, if I see that shape in anything, I'm going to consider getting it. So it was like the next week, because that's how it works. I see these Steve Madden ones or Steve New York ones, and I think they were only like $2 to $3 at the thrift store. I got them on like a half off sale, and I was like, let me go ahead and try these. I did not list them high because again, they're a dupe. They're not, and there's lots of people that have these listed. So I just made sure to price accordingly, and they sold very quickly on an offer for $25. I don't imagine that sandals are going to be doing well as we move into colder weather, but for the warmer weather, they did. If you have anything shaped like this, I would get those listed ASAP. And then lastly on Poshmark is Elaine Fisher. I still love selling this brand. I do try to stick to the plus sizes, but occasionally I'll come across something that I feel is substantial enough, and sweaters are always a yes in Elaine Fisher for me, regardless of size. So this was an organic cotton cardigan. It was not in a great size. It was a medium petite, but we added a bunch of keywords, and it sold for great bread and butter pricing of $24. All right, guys, so that's it for what sold last week. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching. I am back now, so I'll be back to doing these every single week, and I'll throw some Depop sales in soon for those of you that are missing the Depop sales. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know how your sales are going for you down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!